You want to see the
The
page?
5 panelists are the following: Jack Conway, Cynthia Schwartzberg, Sigmar Gherkin, Pamela Chubbuck, and Norman Traeger. And I'm going to introduce Jack. I'm going to introduce all 5 of them, and then after I do that, they'll start to speak. So this is Jack. Some of you may remember, and he's sitting next to Judy, who I think is on this call. Um, And Jack is a senior faculty member and for many years at the Institute of Cornergetics. He currently works as a cornergetics practitioner and is a pathwork helper, both online and in person. And he teaches at various locations around the world. And he's been on the board at one time. And I remember when I first met Jack, we were at Phoenicia at a faculty meeting, and people were stamping and shaking their fists. And I turned to Jack and said, "I'm not angry. I don't have anger." And he just stood there and laughed at me. So let me stop the share and just everybody wave to Jack. Where are you, Jack? Yeah, there you are. Ah, great. All right. So the next person I'm introducing is Cynthia. All right, Cynthia is a speaker, trainer, and practitioner, and says that everyone has the capacity to heal as long as they have desire. Cynthia works with the brain, body, mind, emotions, and spirit, and she's well known for her work in cornergetics, brain spotting, harmonic brain healing, and again, cornergetics. She recently wrote a book, which is great, called The Curious Voyage of Authenticity. And Cynthia and I work together as both cornergetic practitioners and moms of adopted daughters who played together as children, and now we're both budding authors. So Cynthia, say hi to everybody. Sigmar, and a couple pictures of Sigmar and John, and Sigmar and his wife Connie. Um, and Sigmar is the director of Core Evolution and Core Soma. It's a body-oriented, trauma-sensitive, psychodynamic, mindfulness-centered in the field of humanistic, somatic, positive, and transpersonal psychology, and he does all of that too. So during my tenure as director of education, which began about 1995, Sigmar directed 2 cornergetic training programs, one in California and one in Europe. He also began the one in Australia. And he sponsored John's wonderful summer workshops at a winery called Tremerdy in, I think, in or near Provence, France. And lucky me got to be invited to teach all of those wonderful places. So thank you, Sigmar. So we stopped to share and Sigmar, wherever you are, why don't you just everyone say hello to Sigmar? There you are. And Pam. This is a picture of Pam with John and Valid. And Pam has a lot of licenses. She's a certified bioenergetics therapist, a certified Barbara Brennan practitioner, a licensed counselor, licensed clinical social worker, licensed marriage and family therapist, licensed pastoral counselor, published author, and mentor, director of the Institute of Cornergetics Self, and international cornergetics trainer and supervisor. And she works as a mentor on a soul level.
We nearly killed each other.
With a, and has a beautiful connection with our clients. Pam and I co-chaired the second Core Energetics Conference together in Phoenicia, and we got through it nearly killing each other, but somehow we remained the best of friends. So Pam, say hello to everyone.
Hi.
And this is Norm, and you'll meet Norm in a second. And Norm's a core energetics practitioner. My goal is to make a difference in people's lives. I work with the individual, couples, families, and organizations, navigating what was, what is, and what could be. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. I love that. So Norm is great. And I remember when I first came to core energetics, I never met Norm, but all I heard was his reputation. And people would say to me, you've got to see him practice. He's the best therapist ever. You can't even get into his practice. So I was totally in awe of this person I didn't know. So I do know him now, and I'm very lucky to have had him teach with me and so forth. So Norm, say hello to people.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah. So this is really wonderful, and I thank you for coming. And we're going to start with Jack. All right.
Ay, ay,
Number
ay,
one.
ay, ay. How can it possibly be 50 years? I don't know. I hope I have a little wisdom to put into this pot. Um, Quick reminiscence. I met John before there was even core energetics in Washington, D.C. in the early 1970s. I met Pam at the same time. And I was studying to be a bioenergetic therapist. And I imagine eventually managed to graduate. But along the way, I discovered the pathwork and Eva and the lectures. And so I was taken with that. And I moved to the Phoenicia Pathwork Center. And just as I moved there, John came out with the idea of core energetics. I think it was 1975. And he was proposing a training class. And I had just finished 4 years of training class, and I had it up to here with that. So I had no plans whatsoever to take the core training. And one of those profound moments that Karyne points out, I was walking along a path at the Phoenicia Center, and John came along, and we chatted for a while. And as I was about to go on, John said in a very, very profound voice, he said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I knew what that meant. It meant that that was the first day of the core training. And I don't know how to describe it, but it was one of the most profound moments. I knew something had totally shifted in my life because I realized I had no argument against that. I had to take the training. And it's been the focus of my life since then. The only thing coming close is my family and my marriage. Many of you may have forgotten, but the core energetics for the first 8 or 9 years was actually part of the Pathwork organization. It was not even really called the Core Institute. It was called the Institute for the New Age of Man. After Eva died, it was developed as its own institute. I think in looking at the questions that Karyne put up, the thing that comes to mind is for everybody to remember that the fundamental point of core energetics is to help a person fulfill their life task, to help them remove the blocks that inhibit each person's life task. And sometimes I think that gets lost in all the mechanics. And this to me is a work of love. Okay? And I don't mean the mushy type. I mean the love and caring that's the foundation of behind the courage to be totally honest with oneself and with those we're called to help. Never pull back from that responsibility to bring everything you have, no matter how complicated or difficult it is for you, even when it challenges. That's it, Karyne.
It touched me a lot, Jack. Thank you for sharing that. Well,
Love you, Jack.
yeah, beautiful. All right. So if you have, we'll take questions. You can put them in the chat whenever you want. If you're to a specific presenter, you can write their name by your question. So Cynthia, you're next. And I'm pinning people myself, so you may have to pin if Cynthia can't pin it for you, you can pin your own person so you can just see or put her on speaker view. Okay, Cynthia, you're on.
Wow, Jack, thank you so much. I feel like I traveled down memory lane with you. So true. So I was in a group with Jack in Washington, D.C. before he moved up, and then we moved up around the same time. I moved to the
Miss
city.
Mogul then, right? Remember?
I was Cynthia Mogul then. Yeah. And I don't know I don't know life as an adult other than the pathwork and core energetics. And I put this here because every day when I'm sitting at my desk, this is what I look at. I look at Eva and John. I look at John. I have objects from John's office. And in core energetics, we learn that everything's made up of energy. And these objects and these pictures hold the energy and the essence that just keeps inspiring me. So I just really want to say thank you for everybody being here. And I can't believe it's 50 years. It's just like shocking. So I was thinking, well, time flies when you're having fun. And one thing that core energetics gives us is the life force energy to have a lot of fun. And we had a lot of fun throughout the years. So it's great to see everybody and to be here with that. But I was looking at the questions and thinking about what is one thing that I would want the next generation to think about or to know. And I can't pick one thing because there is so much. But I did think, as Jack pointed out, about love. So that is one thing that CORE gave us. And it's impossible to, differentiate all the details. But something that John gave, and he gave the capacity to look at somebody, look through all the layers and fall in love with them and to mirror back to them the essence, their core of what love they really carry and seeing the best in people. And having come here as such a young adult, I felt really blessed to have had him touch so many aspects of my life and to be in life so much with him and with Eva and with everybody, many people that are still here and on this panel. And in the will to love, he taught us that our hearts and our will, when they're together, it's such a force and power, and it's something that can really lead and guide. So I just pass on to keep working on ourselves, because the other thing that I really got from CORE is the depth and the importance of working on myself and to keep, like, it's a spiral. And it's a spiral for a reason, that it's layer upon layer upon layer, and just keep doing our work. And the more we do our work, the more we have to bring to others. and to share and to support others in their essence. And it's far more than any technique. So although we're learning about typography and how to look at the body and read the body, it's really the love. And it's to really, as Jackie pointed out, to help people find their life force energy, to find their task in life, and to, be free of whatever it is, but to keep working at. We work in core with the personality, from the higher self, the lower self, the mask. It's really, these are tools to help us live passionately, fully, and, face our shadows and come through to the truth. So those are some of the things I was thinking about, but because the work never really ends. And the other thing that I was thinking of for John, in terms of the way he saw people, was I was remembering Pam was there when he came down to Atlanta, like the first time. Somebody interviewed him and he said, "Oh, this is a man who sees the love, who falls in love with his clients." So that's something that I want to pass on, and that's what he gives us. That's what the tools help us come to. That's what we have to offer people. And when I think about the question of what is there something that I've taken from CORE, it's the way I sit with people and the way I see people. So I just wanted to pass that on. And the other thing is, some of the tools that I just feel are coming to life. So that, we work with the mask, lower self, the higher self. Now people in the world are starting to talk about masking. And John gave us so many tools from the get-go. And one of the things I even remember is just even how he wakes up and embraces each day. And he taught me, like, you wake up, you wash off the night, you wash off the dead energy, and you start afresh, you start anew. And the other thing that I remember is that he was teaching us how to do breath work way before breath work has become so mainstream and popular, in terms of the box breathing and breathing into our pelvis and moving our energy. And that's a great way to start a day. And I appreciate him for that. I appreciate, and I've taken into my work and into my life that like just tracking and watching and bearing witness to somebody else's soul and why it unfolds. And the grounding exercises that we learned, the vitality, the importance of looking at our shadow self, but also doing it from a place of kindness and compassion, just as John was able to teach us about love and seeing ourselves with love. Also, treat yourself with good kindness. So the day doesn't go. It's sometimes, you're here, you experience this. I'm speaking to the choir, but core energetics is full of like daring to live fully and gracefully. And one thing that I was thinking about while I was preparing this was John used to always say, "So how's your sex life?" Because in our sexuality are the hidden gems of our life force energy, because sex is life and life is good and life is love. And just really so grateful for this life. So thanks for the people that I met along the way of walking this path with me.
Oh, thank you very much, Cynthia. That was really beautiful, and I feel like John's right here. How's your sex life? But right.
Thanks.
Okay. Let's see, Sigmar. I'm going to ask you to speak next, if that's all right.
Okay, unmute. Here we go. Yeah. So here we are. Good. Yeah. It's wonderful to be here and meet you all. Right. So this one thing that you would want this generation practitioners to know. Well, it's not only to this generation I would like to address that, but to any generation. Is that and that's why co-energetic and the work we do is timeless, to not only that we inquire into the question of consciousness and matter, that's what John already brought to us, and which is totally in vogue in science and everywhere right now, And with that also into the nature and mystery of life, and that you share your knowledge with competence, empathy, and love. And besides all therapeutic interventions that we all know, and decide on what we will use, do not forget the question, who is that person who is standing in front of you, and what's the person's path in life, and how can we support that? So these are almost the three axioms that we got with John in depth, So on the profound memory, I visited John during his lunch break in Munich, I think in 1981 or 82 or so, and we had immediately a recognition of each other beyond therapy, so it's like meeting after eons of separation, so he always went over my hand like this, and then over my leather pants that I was wearing. So he was wondering. So from that moment on, we were joining forces at international conferences and creating new trainings worldwide, as most of you know. So, but we also felt very connected outside of the direct work with the human energy research that we both did, I did with Karyne photography and infrared analysis and biophotonic things that were not available at his time, So just before our meeting here, I found a picture from a time where we were doing a research, or if you want to call it like that, with his aura goggles at the beach of Saint-Tropez, So, so that was our research at that time. And of course, I expanded that into research with scientists and so on. And of course, our visits with healers and researchers and our profound communication and curiosity that we exchanged, coming from the work of Zen and Sufi masters and Native Americans or First Nation people, and how that knowledge would infuse or expand psychotherapy. And he had always his doubts about that, but he was listening, So, and of course, we had many moments of silent communion on our longer rides in Europe or California, and also in our work and meetings outside the work. I mean, just being in presence with each other, So, and that what also leads to the transformational experience, but very strong. There's one, it was not to direct the work, but for sure all the personality work I had done with John and others before that must have prepared me for this, because in the graduation ceremony, while I ignited my candle, my everyday reality split open, and my near-death experience that I had with 5 years old and drowned went fully through my body and reconnected me with my commitment I did at that time to bring light into people's body and life. That's what connected us mostly, So I felt reinitiated with my intentions for this manifestation, and I knew why I did the work that I'm doing now for over 50 years, That means connecting personal process, science, and research, and the opening of the larger dimensions of life in the field of love, So that's how I see my work. And that's what I pretty much changed and exchanged with John, So co-energetics I want to lose, that I don't want to lose as the work evolves. As we all know these days, it's not really anymore about the name or the label, It is about the pulsation of life. I mean, which is taught since millennia by many teachers and traditions. And John had been instilled by Wilhelm Reich to approach a unity of the body, feelings, mind, psychology, and spirituality. That means the basis for our work and our further expanding consciousness. And I think that's what I'm very grateful for. And that is the essence, I think, that I received, and the essence I had the chance to exchange with him many, many, many years till his end. Right, yeah. So thank you. So I think I can give Norman a minute or two extra. So
Can I begin?
Yeah, so thank you, Sigmar. That was very beautiful to hear you talk about your relationship and just end with the pulsation of life. I mean, really touched me.
yeah.
Pamela.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm still seeing, yeah, there I am. I can't see anyone else yet. There. Hi. I'm so excited to be here with you, and I see different people that I know, and people from Brazil and people from Mexico, and all these flooded with these memories and heart feelings and tender feelings and excitement. Also people from the United States and people from California, Sigmar. And, so anyway, here I am, just letting you know that it was only like 24 to 36 hours that I got the information what we were doing because people were sending me to the wrong email and I never got it. So first I thought, oh my God, I don't have time to prepare. And then the other part was like, it's fine because whatever I say is going to be fine, whatever my memories are. And then I looked at that and I thought, okay, I'm going to tell you a story about how I went from a terrified person to somebody who then went out and trained a lot of people in core energetics all over the world and had an amazing life and still have. But okay, so as Jack said, we met together. We were at the community of the whole person and we were in training and that was pretty interesting. And then I heard from my friends about John Fracas that, oh, I had already been working with Alexander Lowen at that point. Okay, John Fracas, very interesting person. He sees energy, he does strange things. I thought, okay, this is an interesting thing. Well, let's go to this workshop in Massachusetts. So Anne and Danny and Jack will remember these people. And I got in Danny's truck and drove from DC to Massachusetts. And we came, it was nighttime, so I had no idea where I was going or where I was. And we went to bed, we got up the next morning, and then we went to the workshop. And I'm sitting there, and as you all know, John used to like to work with about 25 or 6 people. Then he got bigger than that, but I think there were about 26 people who were sitting in that circle. Okay, John's sitting here. I'm sitting a couple of people away from him on the left, and he says, okay, go around, say something about yourself. Why are you here? What's going on? I'll tell you, I don't remember anything that anyone said. But the closer it got to me, the more scared I got. And I forgot everything. I didn't know what to say. My heart was beating. I think it was kind of going like this. And all I could say was, I'm scared. I don't remember what else. But then somebody else spoke, and then somebody else. And then John, who is over here, looks me right in the eye and says, I'm scared too. And I was like, what? This person who's a physician and this and that and all of this can be scared, then that means maybe I can be scared. That was the first time I encountered John. The next time we went back and we decided that our whole training group was going to go to Phoenicia and work with John for a few days. So we go there, and I had been doing the work, but I was still very scared. And 2 or 3 days I watched. It was like, okay, I got to make sure. What is he doing? I don't know what he's doing. Am I going to be okay? And so right at the end, he said, okay, who else wants to work? Then it was getting close. He said, we only have time enough for one person to work. So I jump up, I raise my hand. I'm like, I'm not leaving here until I can have this experience, except I'm still scared. And Barbara, but not Barbara Brennan, another Barbara, jumped up at the same time and said, I want to work. Were you there, Cynthia? No. you weren't, but you probably know what's coming next, right? So John says, okay, you guys, you have to fight it out to see who's going to get this place. And I'm thinking, I'm tough. I was a little girl who used to beat up my brother's friends when he would say, my sister could beat you up. And I was like, okay, I got this. We wrestled around on the floor. I won, whatever that meant at that point. And he says, okay, come on, get up here, lay down on the bed, kick. So I'm kicking, and I don't know what's happening, but I'm kicking, and he sits down on the edge of the bed, and he leans over me close to my face, looks me right in the eye, except I probably had my eyes closed. He said, open your eyes. And I opened my eyes, and as soon as I looked into John's eyes, and I'll probably cry now, I started to cry. I just wept. And my feeling was my mother never looked at me with that much love. And that was a transforming moment. I had been working with Al. At that moment, I was like, I'm going with core energetics. This guy's got the heart. Al Owen was brilliant, and I last saw him when he was 95 years old, when I went to his office to say goodbye because I didn't know how long he was going to be around. Another few years, obviously. But John had the heart. John had the soul. John had the spiritual peace, and that was what I needed and what I wanted. So from there, I just did my thing. And I feel very blessed that I was able to work and train and be supervising to many students. And Cynthia and I started the core energetics in Athens. I live in Athens now, in Atlanta area. And then we kind of went our separate ways. I did that for 20 years. So I did that, and here I am. And now I still love the work. People say, are you retired? You're getting kind of old. It's like, well, no, because I love the work. I just don't want to do it as much. I don't want to do it every day, all day, but I still love it. And all of you have said things that I appreciate and care about and feel so much heartfelt. And I can just say, boy, you guys keep doing your own work. And as life moves around and changes and things happen, sometimes you might say, I don't know, I can do this anymore, or maybe I'm getting a little sick or something, and I'll say, go back to the work, do the work. And it's always on all the levels of being. You have to do the physical work. You have to do the emotional work. You have to do the mental work, and you have to do the spiritual work. So all of it. And love you guys. Thank you. Karyne, I'll turn it back to you.
That was beautiful, Pam. Look for I can't see your little box. Well, there you are. Yeah. So thank you, Pam. That was beautiful. Your story about, your work with John when you first met him was very powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Norm, your turn.
Okay. 1971, at 24 years of age, I walked into the office of Dr. Arne Wellhaven. He was around 50 years old with a very cool Norwegian accent. He was highly recommended by the staff at Jewish Family Service of Hartford, where I had just taken a position as a therapist. My initial consultation was wonderful, except went downhill at the end. He, at the end, said, "You'll come next week, take your clothes off. I'll look at your body, I'll feel your body, and we'll see what's going on." Apparently my eyes dilated in terror, and I got up to leave and said, "I'm not coming back next week." He was confused and said, "Didn't your colleagues tell you about the new work I'm doing?" And I said, "No." And he was aghast and apologetic that I didn't know. So he walked over, gave me a copy of Language, no, not Language of the Body, Betrayal of the Body by some guy named Alexander Lowen. I took it home and I read it, and it was the beginning of major, major change in my life. I went back, had the second session. Arnie is his first name, Arnie Wellhaven, worked with me very powerfully on the floor, physically very strong guy, pressed and gouged, and it didn't hurt. And he didn't believe it didn't hurt. He was really pressing hard. And at one point, he put his fist to my diaphragm and lifted his entire body up in the air, and it still didn't hurt. And I'm laying there on the floor, and 5 minutes goes by, and nothing's happening. So I looked behind, and he was in the corner on the floor shaking. So I thought the guy was having not a heart attack, a diabetic attack. So I crawled over, and he looked at me and he said, "You don't know about me. In World War II, I was in the resistance and I tortured Nazis for information. And I was caught at one point, imprisoned, and was tortured by them. And I can't get you to feel pain." And he said that it was unusual for someone to be as defended and still be functional. And I agreed. I had never cried in my life. Nothing ever hurt me. I was not sick one day with a cold or a flu at all up until I was the age 23 or 24. I had feelings. For example, I was extremely close to my grandfather, loved him dearly. And when he died, I was devastated, heartbroken, distraught, but I didn't cry. I didn't cry. Wellhaven worked with me for weeks, but he didn't try to bust my blocks open. He worked on my eyes, he worked on breathing, he worked on my occipital area in the base of the skull, tried to help me tolerate physical stress, but not pain. And he even quoted Robert Frost saying, "Don't ever take a fence down until you know why it was put up." Interesting concept about defenses. Then he elaborated more and said, "Sometimes you don't take the fence down, you repair it and make it a better fence." And he said, "Sometimes people don't even have a fence and you need to help them build one." Interesting. So, not trying to bust open anything. One day I'm sitting there and I began to sob. We were just sitting talking, and I sobbed uncontrollably. First time I actually cried in my life. And from then on, I was a man on a mission. I read everything Reich wrote, everything Lowen wrote at that point. John hadn't published it. And I entered the bioenergetic training program in 1972 and went through 3 years and then switched to core energetics. But I met John that first year. There was a initial workshop that Lowen did the first weekend as executive director, and John did the next weekend as director. I think that was probably the last thing he ever did with bioenergetics. And there was John, and I decided I would actually work. I was young, 25 at the time, and the idea of working in front of, I think there were about 37 people, plus 10 faculty was pretty daunting for me, but I did it. And John worked most of the sessions, by the way, the weekend before and then the day before with John were so powerful, tremendous emotional release, energy, crying. And the sessions were only 35, 40 minutes. John starts working on me and he's working hard. That was my first meeting with him. He's working, he's pounding, he's stretching and this and that, and nothing's happening. And he's working and he's working. And over 2 hours go by instead of the normal, and nothing's happening. And people are getting restless, pissed off, uncomfortable, and nothing's happening. And I was trying my best. I was hitting, screaming, doing everything, but no affect, no feeling. And John sat down on the floor next to me and said, "Okay, we're about to end. Is there anything else you want to say before we end?" And, everybody thought it had been a dud. I thought it was a dud. I thought he was, but what came up is I stood up and I wasn't feeling anything. He's sitting on the floor. I put my hand on his shoulder and I looked at him, and what came out in a deep, resonant voice was, "John, you better go get Al." Essentially saying, "You didn't do a damn thing with me. You better get Lowen to work with me because you don't know what you're doing." I wasn't feeling it, but it came out. The place went nuts. They were so upset that I was so disrespectful. People were yelling and screaming. I was confused because I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel judgmental, but that's what came out. At a certain point, a faculty member, 50-year-old person, came running, sobbing, identifying with what I was going through, held me sobbing, and I fell apart and cried for the second time in my life. And within 5 minutes, everybody was crying instead of being angry and pissed off. And that was really the major beginning for me. But essentially, putting down John, telling me better go get Al Lowen was my introduction to John. After 3 years, like I said, I literally moved to Phoenicia, became a resident, met Jack Conway there. He was there, among many other people, living there full time, commuting to Westport, Connecticut at my practice at the time, studying pathwork, studying core energetics. Quite a situation. It was an amazing. We lived it. We had sessions. We used to joke we should have checkbooks that said Center for the Living Forest, paid to the order of, because we were doing so many sessions. We even had a noon group of the residents every day. We had angel teams to help each other. Amazing process. The one thing, many things I'd want to pass on, it's kind of in Reichian language, but to say to everyone to keep struggling with, keep trying to understand, and keep dealing with in yourself and in others the profound evolutionary challenge of integrating the birthright of our primitive involuntary nature with the birthright of our developing ego. Yeah, I believe that it's a profound challenge how to raise, and I'll use a strong word, civilize our children without breaking their spirits or breaking our spirits. Such a challenge. I'm not glorifying the return of the primitive, but rather its integration with ego functioning. There's an interesting quote by William Stieg in Reich's book, Listen, Little Man. Stieg was an artist, but he also wrote the intro, and it said, "Angels at birth, we become lost souls, and so it has been forever so long as we learn from reading the ancients." Some anecdotes I thought about. In 1977, I had been seeing John weekly and sometimes every other week for sessions for a long time. And all of a sudden, he stopped doing body work with me. I was traveling from Phoenicia to see him in the city, spending a lot of money. And the guy's not doing any body work. He's sitting there and talking with me week after week after week. And I'm complaining, John, come on. I teach course for you all over the world. I'm spending all this money and time, and he just smiled and talked. And finally, one day I walked into the office and I had it and I screamed at him as loud as I could and said, Caracas, open my fucking energy up. And he looked at me calmly and said, what? And give more energy to the devil? Clearly talking about my intentionality of what I wanted to do with that energy. Similar to a woman named Mickey, who was like one of the main bioenergetic teachers way before then when I was working with her. And I said, Mickey, help me open up my sexuality. And she said, yeah, so you can be a fucker, intentionality. It was a real gift. I had another interesting experience with Ellsworth. I'm sorry, what?
1 minute remaining.
Okay. Another interesting experience with Ellsworth Baker, who was the main Reichian therapist. He'd really inherited, the whole training of Reichian MD, ergonomist. And I wanted to see him. And he was like 80 years old, ill. He was ill. He saw him in the city, very thin. And he wrote the book Man in the Trap that many of you have probably read. So I go see the guy, and I'm big shot, core energetic therapist, and he does a great intro, puts me on his bed, and has me breathing for 15 minutes. And I'm vibrating like you can believe. I'm literally bouncing up and down off the bed. And I look over him, so proud. And he looked at me, this thin guy, and he said, big deal. I said, what? And he said, it's good. Like a car, at least the car starts. That's good. Some people's car doesn't start, but it's out of tune. So think about a well-tuned car. It's a great car. You have to put your hand on the dashboard and you feel it humming. He said, when you become less afraid of the life force in you, it'll hum. It'll come from deeper in. I could go on, but Reich, Lowen, John and Eva really saved my life and allowed me to begin to tolerate my feelings and others.
Yeah. Thank you, Norm. That was amazing. And hearing the depth of your experience, I'm glad you were able to share it with us. Yeah, so we're going to open this for questions, and I can't see the chat. I don't know if you can, but if you haven't, Cynthia, but if you haven't written anything in the chat, do so now. If you have a question for all the panelists or someone in particular. Is there anything in the chat, Cynthia?
No, but I can open us up with a question that came up for me while I was listening to everyone.
Okay, is it for one person or everybody?
Kind of for everybody. So it's whoever feels called to answer, please do. And the question is, many of you talked about love. And I'm curious if, the traditional concept of love, of course, is how different it is. And how would you describe love now that you've been working with love all these years? And I'm wondering if you could get some depth of understanding around that or give some depth.
So who would like to try to answer that question?
Well, I think you've already posed it in the right way, Cynthia. It's a growing thing. It evolves. My connection with the word and the feeling, but also the passion has evolved and hopefully still evolving.
Right.
Thank you, Jack.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of something that Emmanuel wrote, and some of you know Emmanuel.
Yep.
And many of you do. Anyway, that's Pat Rodegast's work. And Emmanuel says, love holds the leaf together. Meaning love holds everything together. The leaf, the human life, everything. So what does that mean? You're asking, Cynthia, that's maybe it's something that one has to feel or see energetically, but definitely to feel. And without love, we have nothing.
Yeah, let me add one thing that I think Pam's got it, which is you have to allow yourself to feel the evolution of loving. And that's the key element to me.
And just to build on that, Jack, it's like a force that we give and receive. It's an ebb and a flow. And I was thinking of Emmanuel also because Emmanuel taught there's love and there's fear. So when we're in the flow, and I guess I can speak from my own lived experience, being in the flow of life, it just feels like a very open spaciousness. Where in fear, I'm like guarded and protected, and it's a slower vibration. And I think the gift of core is it helped us learn how to tune into, tune into our bodies to differentiate these energies. So just to add that.
Okay. Thanks, Cynthia. For myself, even though I'm not a panelist, I know in my work, my chest changed completely. I never felt my chest until I did core energetics. And now when I think about love, there's so much life. It's so alive. I really can feel the streaming inside of me. I had to learn that I actually was Angry Jack to find that streaming. Right. So thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so do we have other questions either in the chat or if you just want to raise your hand, that's fine.
There's no other questions in the chat. There's a lot of gratitude and love in the chat, though. I just want you to know many people are so pleased to be here and so grateful for this panel.
Well, since we have time.
I can just tell a quick Emmanuel story since Emmanuel was mentioned, Pat Rodriguez.
Sure.
Very quick. I was at a reading, it was Pat with Emmanuel and a number of people. And being a wise ass back then, when my turn to ask Emmanuel a question, I called him Manny instead of Emmanuel. And people were outraged. He's a spirit calling him Manny. And Pat Rodriguez started laughing, hearing what Emmanuel said. And she said to everybody, Emmanuel says, Norman and I go way back. It's fine. It was just funny. We could get so politically correct,
That's cool. Very, very good. That's great. All right, so let me suggest to you to come up with a question if you can, and if not, if you have a feeling you want to share to some of our panelists, to just tell them right here and now while they're here and you're here, you can speak to them outright.
Fernando has a question.
Hello, everyone. Hello,
Hi,
Pam,
Fernando.
Karyne, Jack,
Hey,
and everybody else
Nando,
on here.
baby, Nando.
Good to see you. I haven't met Cynthia yet and Norm, and many people here. But the question I have is, after all this time, all these years, all the work you've done, what has evolved in your perception of, the work we do with the higher self and the lower self?
Can you say it again? I
I was
don't
going to say, give us a
or
little
in
more
more
focus.
words, maybe.
In more words. So like this is like a basic work in core energetics, working with the higher self and the lower self. And when we start core energetics, we have an idea of what the higher self and the lower self is, how we work with it. And myself, as I got more experienced, that evolved. I have like 15 years of experience, and I want to hear like from you about 30, 40 50 years of experience, how your own perception of your work with the higher self and the lower self has evolved.
Okay,
all
so
this.
whether we've changed, how it's changed for us over these years, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
has
it's the-
your concept, if it has, of the lower self and the higher self changed?
yeah. The way
Well,
you see it, the way you experience it.
all right, got it. For me, um, I like to be succinct. To me, the lower self is the intent to stay separate, to stay split off. The higher self is the intent for total connection.
That's a good one. Thank you. Anyone else want to try that one?
I've learned to appreciate how powerful the lower self is and to be able to really help people slowly build the ability to tolerate it, because what comes up can be some fairly nasty kinds of ideation and impulses. And if somebody isn't prepared for it, it causes undue stress. And sometimes if we go too quickly into the higher self and ignore the lower self, we also can create a mini crisis. It's really going back and forth, appreciating that they're two sides of the same coin in a sense. Very, very different. But
I also think that it's an evolution of understanding as a person gets to differentiate and learn it within themselves. Because from a trauma lens, it's like parts of that I used to think were my lower self were parts that were really wounded.
yeah,
So there's an importance of differentiating. So I thought I had a negative intention, but that's because my ego wasn't really developed enough, or I didn't fully understand the bigger picture, which is the gift of the body can show us like where the holding is, but some of that is really, muscle armoring to protect us. So I think as you evolve and working with yourself or working with people, it's like, we spoke before about the spiral. There's many layers to it. So it's not so concrete this or that. And I think that the more I've learned the power of that choice, the more I also just wonder, like, is it a choice or is it not a choice? But I think the fact that we can open up to get curious and just live in almost the not knowing, but yet diving deeper into like releasing and feeling the energy. But as Norman said, like within, a flow that's not going to be too much too fast, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Cynthia. Go ahead, Sigmar.
Well, Fernando, that was one of my discussion points I had with John. I never used this terminology, high and lower self, because it's just too vague for me if you want to work precisely. Everybody can have an interpretation and put interpretation into it. It may come from Jungian shadow. It's an old terminology. So I wanted to be a little bit more precise than what Cynthia just said. It points exactly in that direction. What is the development of your own emotions and feelings, and how do you perceive them? How do you feel them? Because the old understanding, negativity is heavy, is dark, is gravity, is low, or it's higher, spiritual, and so on and so on. We can forget all that these days, knowing that all frequencies are needed if you want to be really in the unity with all existence. And it's more the alignment in yourself that connects all these. And if you then call it higher and lower, okay, I don't care. But if you use it as a definition, then it's very vague. So in that respect, I applaud you for finding your own path of changing it for you in the practice and taking Cynthia's advice here. Explore that in yourself. What would that be? That you feel as more open, more flowing, or as Jack says, more spiritual. We know that there is no higher and lower anymore. And that was the language of the past. So we have to find a new terminology, a new energetic expression, a new experience with it. So, yeah, thank you for that question. I was holding back with it, but it seems I don't use the terminology and be very adamant about that when clients come with that to make it an experience for them, what they mean and not what they think about it.
Sigmar, I like what you said. I don't know if it's adding to help people be able to tolerate the lower self and be able to be senior to it, because it's not very nice. And if we have to have the ability to absorb it like a sponge in a sense, rather than a slippery tube where we act it out or have to hold it even tighter to hold it in, you know, to be able
On that note, Norm, I know when I worked with John, it took me 5 years to really touch into my lower self, seriously, until I really felt the shame of the lower self. And it was a beautiful experience. It took that long.
But I do want to support also like Sigmar's suggesting that the language is evolving and be mindful of the evolution of it versus like this was what we were given back when, because that was the language that they could. And the guide would often say, it's hard to find the words, but the guide did the best they could for the time for what we could understand. So as we keep evolving, then the understandings also keep changing.
Can you or
I have a memory.
I just want to ask one question. Can you say how the language is evolving?
Well, like this, either like the higher self versus lower self. I also don't really use the terminology lower self, and the guide also talks about negative entities or something. I don't know about some of these words that we used. They were good frames of reference. So I came on also very young, but to say that I intentionally never negatively did something, I don't know. But I do believe that it's important for me as in my consciousness getting more aware to explore what was that and where was I coming from. And maybe I did the best I could at the time. But now that I see, like I'm just taking off more and more blinders.
Okay, I get it. Thank you. Thank you. Pam, did you want to add something here?
Yeah, well, I was just thinking that all of this is energy. And I'm thinking about your book, Karyne. You're saying out there, like, we have to help people understand their anger and what to do with it, which is really beautiful. But the memory I have, one memory I have so many with John. We're in the barn in Phoenicia, and there's a whole group meeting, and I was assisting him, which I did for many years. And people are running around, yelling and screaming, and John's over there laughing, and he's saying to me, "Do you see that red energy that's flying across there?" And I'm like, "No." Do you see this happening and that happening? And he's like, "This is great because this energy is moving. This energy is something that has to move. We have to deal with it. So whatever we call it, we can figure that out. But we definitely have to understand it in ourselves and what it means to us."
Right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other questions Oh, Sigmar, go ahead.
I just add one more thing here because you bring up the state of energy, and you know that I was very connected with John about that because we both could see energy, we both could communicate about it and so on, and we did research about it. So in the body, feeling, mind field, there is no upper and lower. There's only constant movement that is changing, So and when we talked about and see things, oh, there's red or whatever, do you see the beam, we see energy moving. And that's a continuous movement that can evolve from thoughts, from feelings, from wherever in the body, or just from the muscle, from intention, So And if that's static, that's where we got to go to. That's where the bioenergetic exercises came in, which were tools of that time. I mean, if John would have been stuck in kicking and screaming for 50, 60 years, he would be still stuck on the couch with psychoanalysis. But he changed, he moved on, and that's the same for us. We have to find tools and formulations of our time and to reach people so that it's more, as I call it, from Zen to Santana, from screaming to meditation. In that spectrum, we have to work,
Right.
to reach
Is
the
it okay? There's a question from Amy. Amy, do you want to tell us your question?
Thank you so much. Oh my God. I'm loving this so much. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. I guess as I'm sitting here, I'm aware of the generations in the room, and I can really feel myself here as a millennial who works with Gen Z. And you're talking about evolution, which is, what the pathwork talks about. I think what this work is all about. And I don't know what my question is. It's kind of something like, I'm just curious what you see, how you see humanity evolving and what our role as core energetics practitioners is in I mean, when I work with Gen Z clients, I feel for them, the world they're in, that they're coming into with the internet and everything. Um, And yeah, my feeling is that they're really disconnected from their bodies. And then at the same time, some of these Gen Z clients that I see are so psychic and so wise beyond their years. So I don't know. I'm just bringing that in. I want to see what everybody thinks.
A great question. So who wants to address it?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right, Amy, what you perceive there and the changes, So, and the perception that we are in. When we began Koenig, the term trauma has not been on the scene, Now we talk of collective trauma, ancestor trauma, and whatever, that maybe even the Neanderthal had a trauma and you were in it still, and how does it load down on you? Can all be, So, but the question is then for you, how do people are more sensitive to telepathy, to outer exploratory situations? That can emerge now. I think society is ready. What John was already writing about also and trying to explain, I think we are more ready for the extrasensory perception that we have, and that people sometimes are good. We in our transpersonal work don't call it psychosis, we call it spiritual emergency, How can we meet a person on that level and see, wait a minute, that is not a distortion, that's a perception that the person has. And how can we differentiate that and not making immediately a claim about the character that the person may have, but staying open for what is it what I perceive. And that is the learning process for us, that we came from a character learning, from energy learning that was directed to a personality and so on, and saying, wow, there's a much larger dimension that we have to stay open for. And that's you're right, and you're much more maybe attuned to that these days. Yeah.
Amy, when some of us started, this was so radical that it was almost clandestine. We had to be. We had to be very careful to explain ourselves that we weren't being sadists, kind of thing. I think nowadays, as I look around, I think that this is so has become enough mainstream that you don't have to worry about that. You just enjoy people who come and want this. But there's a second level I think about your question, which is what is the spirit world sending to Earth nowadays? Okay. What kind of soul struggles are being challenged by the evolving world? And I think that's a thought that you need to keep in mind, that there are souls who find this fertile ground for their struggles and not take it as something that is terrible, but something that is useful.
Beautiful.
I would just also add, Amy, that I think more and more somatic work, as Jack said, Sigmar, that there's more work that's coming out for your generation. So things that took a longer time for healing, I think may not take quite as long. And it's important to keep working if you come in from the body versus like a lot of the analysis and the cognitive, like even in core, we used to say, listen below the story that somebody's presenting and be really with them where they're at. And what Jack is saying, it's kind of interesting from your generation, is that a lot of people are getting caught, like look also at the society and the value system and how that's changed, because so much emphasis is presented on how I'm supposed to be in the world. And I just watch a lot of people running around with a lot of anxiety because they're so separate from themselves, which is one of the guide's teachings about separation from self. I forget the exact title of the lecture. It's in the 100 range.
To talk about being separated from yourself, I had a client who was autistic. And how do you reach an autistic person if you can't touch them? And you can't touch them. You really can't even get near them. So what I did was I said to him, is it okay with you if I bring a rope into the room? And I'll throw you one end. I said, I feel the need to be connected to you somehow. I'm going to throw you a rope, a physical rope, and we're going to hold on to it together in the room, which is something I could not have learned anywhere but core energetics. I mean, it just popped out. And it was very moving because we spent the hour together. We were actually together. I was holding one end. We were moving it a little bit. And I couldn't learn that anywhere else. Nothing could have taught me that. I got a master's degree in social work, but core energetics put me on the map as far as helping other people was concerned.
That's
I mean, what Karyne brought up about the spectrum. I mean, first of all, there's a spectrum. One of the things I've done with that kind of person is have them touch me, for example.
That's good too.
Which is something that no therapy other than core energetics, as I know, would ever brought to bear. Okay?
Right. Yes.
So you have to allow yourself to be radical with very great care, though. I emphasize the care and the measuredness that other people have brought up.
Yeah. And if I may just talk personally for a minute about what I'm going through. My husband is handicapped. He can't walk. He's lost the ability to walk from a knee surgery, blah, 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 blah. And we were talking about the lower self and the higher self. And I am constantly in battle with both of them, the lower self and the higher self. The higher self has to be the caregiver, and the lower self says, I want to kill you. Why are you doing this to me? Why are you handicapped? Why am I living with this? This is not supposed to be happening. I'm supposed to be traveling and having a good time. Fuck. It ain't happening. So
Karyne, thank you. It's so great hearing from you. I'm loving it.
Yeah. Thank you, Karyne.
come on, baby.
I love that
my heart and
need
soul
to
are with
be
you.
real.
Sigmar wants to address something that you're talking about, so go
Okay.
for it, Sigmar.
Yeah, I think which is also an answer for Amy. You describe a principle, an energetic principle that we learned in core energetics, and you got to make it an experience with a practice for the client. So that is how we develop new techniques, new approaches, new ways of dealing with the situation. So it's not a fixed technique. It's a technique that we develop in relation with the client.
Yeah.
And that's the art, I think.
I
Absolutely.
applaud that.
Okay, Aiden.
Hi guys, thanks so much for doing this. It's really fun. I've had a chance to know many of you. Sigmar, I even got to meet you at Esalen once. It was a moment that we got to share. It was nice. Norm, I'm seeing you for the first time. Um, you've done the work, you've had a lot of experiences, but one of the things that comes with time is that you can see the whole in a different way than somebody who's been around for less time. And I guess one of my questions is like, I know for me it's a passion, but the connection, the relationship, and the community is it's basically, as far as I can tell, the vehicle by which we can do this work. We don't do this alone, right? It's this interconnectedness with each of us that holds the container that allows us to go on this journey. And we're all humans, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And I'm wondering, over the 50 or more years that you have watched the communities have ebbs and flows and growth and contraction, would you have any insight or wisdom or suggestions for how do we keep fostering a positive sense of community? How do you see from your perspective the ways that leaders now in this work can hold all of the pieces of what it means to be doing this work in community? Does that make sense?
I'd like to give one perspective on that.
Because there's been lots of pitfalls, and you've probably
Yes.
seen them all,
Yeah.
so.
And I certainly want to hear others. It's really easy when you get 2 or 3 people together, let alone a big community, to be unconsciously become cult-like without realizing it. Not that it's a cult, where we think we have the secret. I remember standing up in a Saturday night meeting, Jack, saying, I can't believe we call this place the Center for the Living Force. I'm okay if we're a center for the living force, but the center, it was a big deal. And things, on and on like that. And to be able to disagree and want to understand each other rather than, I'm right and you're wrong, And I think people have been doing that since the beginning of recorded history, every group.
Pam's going to add in a thought on this, I think, if I can.
Yes. Yeah. I was thinking before that one of the things I don't ever want to lose in this work is the personal, physical connection that we have as human beings. And when COVID came, it was really hard that I was working. I had to figure out how to work with people online.
Oh.
And then when I came back with the first person who walked into my office, I was, oh, thank God. Because I think I don't want to brag, but I thought I'm pretty good at this. I'm better at this than somebody who never did anything with the body, or just they're sitting there talking. I could do more. But as soon as somebody was in front of me, I could see all the subtle things. And it's so important. So that's just one thing. But the thing about getting together, like doing this is great. That we have to stay together and talk. And I always said to John and others, core energetics is an evolutionary process. And that means that core energetics itself must evolve. And he was like a little like, oh, I don't know about that. But it's obvious that is something that is happening. It has happened, and we need to do it and to keep I'll say the core of it, the epicenter of it, which is the body, the emotions, the mind, the will, and the spiritual work all the time. So,
Okay, thank you, Pam. I think Aiden's question is really good and one we need to continue to hold in our hearts, minds, and souls, because I do believe in community, but one, as Norm says, where we can each have our own ideas and disagree. But it's 8:30. Do we want to stop at this point, Lindsay and Cynthia? I'll let you direct me on how this goes now.
Well, we did have several questions, and I think what I'm going to do is save the chat.
Can you at least read the questions out loud so we know? Because
Sure. So, we kind of hit on some of them and said, what does the panel think of evolving core to encompass other models? For example, internal family systems talks about multiple parts, and from my own experience, I have multiple masks and multiple defenses. That's one question. Another one is, has anyone written any books as a therapist? And if there are any books you would recommend for somebody beginning their journey? Another question is, we teach the energetic principle of expansion and contraction. How do you view the current moment? How important is it to work with the shadow and to challenge a choice to hate a hater, possibly a disowned part? Question mark. Did anyone meet Wilhelm Reich? And how do you see core group work evolving to address the collective beyond the primary focus on individual work? So those are the questions, and I will save the chat. So
I save them. I mean, they're great questions, and I don't know, Lindsay, maybe we can do this again. It's really kind of amazing, and those are wonderful questions. So let me turn it over to you, Lindsay, and see how you would like to go about closing.
Yeah, I just first and foremost with a lot of gratitude to all of the panelists. So just enormous thank you. Yeah, it's really, really, really special to have you all here this evening, especially in the summer. I know it's tough. So I want to say that. I want to also just offer a few opportunities to stay in connection. I have a thought that even what I can do is take the questions to the panelists, and the panelists could write some answers that we can share in our newsletter, like from the elders, a question in the corner of the newsletters where they engage with it a little bit so that we can continue to share information that way. So if you look in the chat, Cynthia did include a link for how to sign up to the newsletter if you're not already on it. So that's one way of staying engaged. And then, as synchronicity would have it, one of the things we've been working on in the Institute is starting something called the Core Cafe, which we're going to begin advertising this week. I've just put it in the chat. And what it is really going to be is a space like this for people to come together and talk about, and not just really a panel discussion, but really a community-wide discussion. So there's some information in the chat describing what that will look like. We'll begin advertising in the mailer. The date is in the chat as well. And the first one is, in a lot of these questions, trauma came up. So the theme for the first Core Cafe is how trauma informed is core energetics. So this is for anyone to attend. The moderator of the first one will be Amy Felchuk with another member from our community that I don't actually yet know. But again, it will all be in the newsletter, and we'll be able to share information with you there. So yeah, I invite you to stay in conversation. The Institute in New York is happy to support other institutes if they want to host these types of things, but we're also happy to be a gathering ground for us to have these types of conversations. And then, yeah, I'd also share that, through the newsletters, you will also hear we have some new programs and offerings happening at the school. It's also a place where we want to support further our alumni and our graduates. So we've started a series this summer called the Breaking Cycles series. So if you're an alumni of the school and want to have a digital offering where you get to share about the work of core energetics in your life and be a part of that series, please reach out to me. We've seen some good turnouts. This is a great way to introduce new people to the work, to both build your practice and to get them to know about the work of core energetics. So At the Institute, we're busy trying to create a lot more entry points to the work. We have 2 and 4 year programs and weekends, which are quite big commitments for people who just want to know a little bit more. And we think the best way to know a little bit more is to start working with a practitioner to join, a virtual free offering to just hear a little bit about what sets the work apart from other approaches to well-being. So if I had to say one thing, I'd say stay connected on the newsletter. And to the panelists, I'll send the questions out and we'll figure out how to disseminate some of this information.
And I just want to thank each of the panelists. I mean, I'm really totally overwhelmed and fascinated by your responses. So Sigmar, Nor, Cynthia, Pam, Jack, I love you all anyhow, but I'm feel totally enriched after this evening. So thank you. And I'll thank myself for being a moderator.
Thank you for pulling it together, Karyne.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.